To the government and to big business, people are cash cows and taxable objects. Our importance is measured by how productive we are, how much we spend, how much we can be taxed, and which way we vote. Our happiness is not on the list. When you appreciate that this is how we're seen, you'll understand where feminism came from and why it has so much support from government. They want women in the workplace, and they'll use every method that they can, including lying about men and making women feel oppressed by men.
Women are not going to go back in the box. They're out, and they're going to be playing an even greater role in society than they do presently.
The best way to get people to do what you want is to make them feel that they're doing it for themselves. Women have begun to find out that feminism is not about women can do this, women can do that. It's about women have to do this and have to do that. Women's choices in life are becoming as narrow as men's.
Why are women so depressed at the moment? Because they appear to be. I mean, why is that? Why would they be so depressed about things?
Well, because of the corporate world. They've discovered that it's shit. There were those of us who were telling them in the 60s that life in the boardroom was probably even less rewarding than life in the kitchen sink. And they found that out. And they found out what a hostile and nasty environment it is to live in and work in. They found that the pressures are inhuman.
If we follow the money trail, all we have to ask is who really wins because of feminism? Who are the big winners by having women fighting to be in the workplace? Let's look at some of the suspects. Government strongly supports feminism. Putting women to work creates much larger tax revenues and enables them to grow massively, with departments for women, equal opportunities commissions, and increased legislation. Feminism has enabled the housing market to more than double the legitimate cost of a home for the sake of more profit. By no stretch of the imagination should a flat in Barnet cost this much. But it does because feminism has created a situation where women are working and earning like men. Basic economics tells us that a house can only be priced at a level a household can afford. House prices can be massively and artificially inflated because there are now two people to take money from, rather than just one. Estate agents' percentage fees are therefore more than doubled by feminism, and it's the same for landowners. And the government gets larger stamp duty payments and higher capital gains taxes as well. Banks now have the profitable luxury of being able to lend against two wage earners when they dole out mortgages. Because of inflated house prices, they more than double their profits. They also increase their security because there are now two people to chase for the money. Because of feminism and the mythical independent woman, women have been buying more cars. More cars, in fact, than men buy. Feminism has been a godsend to car makers. Indeed, the boss of Toyota once said, "Independent women can now buy many more of their own clothes, and still get clothes bought for them by men. Not bad at all." The list of winners from feminism goes on, but those not on the list, however, are men, women and children. They all lose. Did we need feminism?
And some of the roles were fairly settled. I think they're much more amorphous now, much more difficult. And I mean, a lot of it's, I mean, I'm not saying I'm opposed to it. I mean, I'm not opposed to the changes. I mean, I think we did need sex equality. I think to have a society in which you have the men being all the macho and women embodying all the finer things in life is a mistake.
Are you saying that there was a need for feminism in the 70s, 60s?
Absolutely, yeah. There's probably always going to be a need for anything to keep a balance there. What we're seeking to do in mankind, in fact, is to work with women, because I don't disagree with feminism in terms of equality for women. All I would counter that is it's got to be equality for men and women, and at any time that anything that is put on the statute books, it should be looked in a balanced way from the male and the female perspective. At the moment we have a Women and Equality Unit where everything that goes on the statute book is looked at it, but only from a female perspective. Now if you keep doing that with all of your laws, eventually you're going to get everything so that it all goes one way, and that's not right.
Whilst he's undoubtedly correct about bias in the law against men due to feminism, I disagree that feminism was ever needed to address an imbalance between the sexes. The pendulum analogy for the position of men and women before and after feminism is that things have gone too far in women's favour in recent times. The pendulum has swung too far. But I think the reality is somewhat different. There is no pendulum. This is really another method used to promote the false idea that men have had their time of having it good and now it's women's turn. I hope to show you that this idea is entirely wrong. We need feminism like a hole in the head. Feminism is not a positive force for change. It's an ideology based on hatred and control. The reason it became successful was because it began to pretend to be what it wasn't. It pretended to be about love for women and freedom for women, when it's always been about hatred of men and slavery for everyone.
They were very, very highly organised Marxist groups of women of one sort or another. When I remember being horrified when I saw them storming the Miss World competition, thinking to myself, how can these women talk about liberation for women and women supporting each other and then go and bully a section of other women that they don't like because they're doing something they don't approve of.
Put a woman behind that counter! Get lost! Freedom!
If I went to speak, there was screaming feminists outside. I tried to publish a book called Prone to Violence. We finally did get it published, but I had to have a police escort all round England, and there were death threats and bomb threats.
Feminism doesn't say that women are the equal of men. It says that women are better than men. A feminist is therefore the same as a racist, and it should be regarded as the same type of person.
There's an ideology that is focused solely on providing women with advantages in the world within which they live, to the exclusion of men. And most women who describe themselves as feminists, in my view, do not really know the ideology that they are supporting in so doing. About half the population at the moment, half the female population at the moment, seems to describe themselves as feminists or as supporters of feminism. And when you ask them what it is that they are in fact supporting, they are saying that they are supporting equality for men and women. When you then pursue them as to what their notions of equality are, you find that it basically boils down to the notion that women are as capable as men in virtually all areas of life, and in many cases superior to men. And why I strongly object to the notion of feminism is that it only considers one half of the population, and almost always to the detriment of the other half. There is no way that I would regard feminism as anything but an evil in our society. I can put it as bluntly as that. I see it as a hateful ideology, somewhat akin to Nazism, in the sense that feminism discriminates against people on the basis of their genetic code, and for no other reason.
Any woman who proudly admits to being a feminist must be considered in the same light as a woman who proudly admits to being a racist. And how does society react to racism?
The number of prosecutions for race hate crimes in England and Wales has soared by 1/3 in 12 months.
A feminist is typically female, but can also be male. A feminist likes to think that a woman needs a man like a fish needs a bicycle, but doesn't like to think that the bicycle was invented by a man. A feminist likes to think that God could be a woman, but not the devil. Some feminists think that all men are rapists. Some feminists even want the spelling of women changed to distance themselves from men. Feminists believe that sex differences between the sexes are not due to natural tendencies due to biology, but instead are due to socialization. In other words, Lucy likes dolls and pink and wants to be a hairdresser when she grows up because she's forced into these desires by a male-dominated society.
Well, now, this is fun. A marvellous new take on Cinderella, in which Cinders doesn't want to go to the ball and marry the prince, who's a real nerd anyway. She wants to be a mechanic. Or, this is lovely too. It's Sleeping Beauty, except when Beauty wakes up, she decides she doesn't want to marry the prince at all, because he's...
a nerd! And anyway, she wants to be a mechanic.
That's right. And set up home with her best friend Susan, who's a football player. Such positive stuff, I think.
That's why application forms use the term gender instead of sex. Gender means masculine or feminine, not male or female. The inappropriate use of the word gender implies that we have a choice in whether we're male or female. Feminists believe that women played a greater part in history than they actually did. There's an ongoing effort by women to rewrite history in the hope that no one will notice.
Believe it or not, there were boys as young as 6 or 7 doing one of the most dangerous jobs of all on a ship, being a powder monkey. But it wasn't just boys, was it, Jenny?
No, there were women on board ship, and anyone who wasn't involved in the actual manning of the guns would be helping in some way, running the powder from the magazine.
How do we know that?
Well, there were contemporary accounts, but also when there was a Naval Service Medal issued for Nile and Trafalgar, then a lot of women came forward to try and claim that medal, but were refused.
The reason these women were refused medals is not because the women were oppressed, it's because the women weren't there. Women weren't permitted aboard warships until the late 1970s, over fears for their safety. And so the idea of women serving aboard military vessels in the 18th century is ridiculous. The most likely reason these women stepped forward was to claim on behalf of a man or boy who died on duty. But here, Channel 4 attempts to spin the idea that women have been done out of their rightful recognition in battle.
How about some non-fiction? Perhaps some simple children's history, you know, kings and queens?
Queens and kings, of course. Here we are.
This is just Queens.
Marvellous, strong, feisty women. Boudica, Elizabeth I, Richard the Lionheart.
He was a king.
A lot of people think that.
Because he was.
But new research suggests that Richard may have been, in fact, probably was a woman.
But due to sexism was forced to disguise the fact.
Exactly. Like most of the early popes.
Fascinating.
And Henry V.
I see.
And possibly Churchill.
Churchill?
Yes. Winona Churchill. Often mistakenly referred to as Winston.
A great many women don't actually like men, but these women certainly appreciate what men can do for them. For example, women who plan to be single mothers. She'll have sex with a man when she wants to have a baby, and she'll demand that he pays for the upbringing. But she doesn't want to be with the father, or have him in the child's life. Where they do stay with the fathers, these women see men only as workhorses and providers. Why else would a woman's first requirement in a mate so often be a steady job? Feminism has brought in an age dominated by a monstrous female mentality. A me first, I want it all attitude that continues to be incredibly destructive to us all.